Okay, so in the run-up to the election, it should be worth noting that from sort of like this point onwards, I'm not really going to hold back, and I feel like in these sorts of scenarios, it's always good to be open-minded, but also to convey the truth as best as I can put across. Why is it important? Because the truth is the discovery of things that are real, that things that make sense, the things that are tangible, and the things that people agree with. With that being said, however, what's going to be happening over the next couple of weeks is that people will tell you lies and will make you believe that it is the truth because people believe it or accept it without actually saying that they do or not. They will make you want to believe that just because you don't say anything, it means that you can't say that they're wrong. They're going to make you think that that's just the natural order of things, and that is how it is going to be, and we'll be having at least another 14 years of Conservative governments. With that being said, however, this sort of approach to the right-wing politically, might prove to be the beginning of the end for many, many reasons. The first of which is that a couple of days ago, GB News, which has already been punished by Ofcom for 13 accounts of regulation controversies over since its inception, we now face another situation where, according to the BBC, GB News could face Ofcom punishment after breach. Now, I know this is sort of from a few days ago, but this is going to need a bit more of a reminder, especially because you have to bear in mind is that this man right here, Rishi Sunak, the current British Prime Minister, is gambling on surviving a snap election so that he can stay in power, to prove all of his doubters and all of his backbenchers on his side of the party wrong. So, what is the issue? Well, here it is. Sorry about that. You can't ever mute these things and expect them to keep quiet, especially when anything actually worthwhile happens. Ofcom has said it's considering a statutory sanction against GB News after the channel was found to have broken due to impartiality rules. The broadcast regulator announced in February it was investigating a Q&A session which saw British Prime Minister Rishi Sunak take questions from the public. On Monday, Ofcom said it had concluded the programme called People's Forum. The Prime Minister broke its broadcasting rules. Given this represents a serious and repeated breach of these rules, we are now starting the process for consideration of a statutory sanction against GB News, Ofcom said. In a statement, GB News said, Ofcom's finding against GB News today is an alarming development in its attempt to silence us by standing in the way of a forum that allows the public to question politicians directly. You mean to say that there weren't other programs like, what was it called? Oh yes, Question Time. You mean to tell me that those sorts of that program doesn't allow people to question the integrity and the pledges and responsibilities of politicians already? I never would have guessed. The regulator's threat to punish a news organisation with sanctions for enabling people to challenge their own Prime Minister strikes at the heart of a democracy at a time when it could not be more vital. The broadcast regulator said the episode received a total of 547 complaints and was presented in the context of the forthcoming UK general election. Yes, but ladies and gentlemen, I said, alarming development in attempt to silence. What do you mean that's the 547 people who were complaining as well? Are they people who are trying to silence GB News? Because lo and behold, and this is something that GB News doesn't really seem to understand, is that it's not just the big guys that GB News thinks are trying to bully them. They are under the... well, no, it's not even that either. They're thinking that for at least 447 people are like not even worth their time. They're only concerned about the big guys. They're not concerned about the little guys. They're not concerned about people like you or me. because they know immediately that that would mean having to actually respect your opinion because, well, for reasons we'll get to very shortly. Ofcom had no issue with this program's editorial format in principle, it said in its ruling. We recognise that this program would focus mainly on the Conservative Party's policies and track record on a number of specific issues, meaning that Conservative viewpoints would be prevalent. Or the only ones that would be there at all. There was no Labour voters, there was no Labour politicians. Everything was aimed directly at one party. And there's a lot of regulations about exactly when it comes to things like this that you have to give a ballot. Well, they'll explain it very shortly. It was incumbent on GB News, however, given the major matters under discussion, to ensure that an appropriately wide range of significant views was given due weight in the programme or in other clearly linked and timely programmes. The regulator noted the Labour Party's positions and views were not included, and nor was there a reference to any future programme where there would be. Ofcom concluded, we found that an appropriately wide range of significant viewpoints was not presented and given due weight in this case. As a result, Rishi Sunak had a mostly uncontested platform to promote the policies and performance of his government in a period preceding a UK general election. The Prime Minister has said that there will be a general election in the second half of 2024. And here we are. According to its website, Ofcom sanctions could see the broadcast regulator impose a financial penalty, shorten a licence, revoke a licence, issue a direction not to repeat a programme, issue a direction to broadcast a correction or a statement of Ofcom's finding. The broadcast regulator has found GB News a breach of its rules 12 times since it launched in 2021. There are 7 investigations still outstanding, including one into a programme hosted by its former presenter Dan Wootton in relation to fairness and privacy rules. An episode of Nigel Farage's show is being investigated for due impartiality. Other programmes, including Breakfast with Eamon Holmes and Isabel Webster, are being investigated under rules about due impartiality and broadcaster views and opinions. In March, Ofcom told the channel it was on notice over future breaches. Well, clearly they weren't, were they? The regulator warned repeated contraventions of the relevant part of its code could lead to a sanction. Yes, and well, that's the thing I need to outline right here. And again, you could say that this is literally, it is what it is, because GB News were not playing ball. They knew fine well what they were doing, considering that they said they were on notice. And the fact that, well, they don't really seem to be terribly indignant, not only to the people that presented it, from Webster to Holmes, or from people who routinely have an issue with privacy rules and impartiality like Dan Wootton. It seems to me that the only reason why they even bothered doing that programme in the first place was to make Rishi Sunak look good and for it to be a broadcasted version of trying to give Rishi Sunak the biggest platform with the biggest majority that he could get at the time. And again, because they never asked Keir Starmer, because it's very doubtful that Keir... if I was Mr. Starmer right now, I would just straight up decline going on GB News, because it would simply be a massacre on basically every side, and, well, GB News would probably take legal action because they've been made to look like, well, morons, to be honest. But as I've said before, and I'll just conclude by saying this, is that they want you to believe that this is true, that they can get away with doing things like this, and you shouldn't be surprised that they'll continue to do it again and again and again. When somebody breaks the rules at least 12 times, trust me, then not only have they not learned their lesson, but they have no interest in listening. They're not particularly concerned at this point with trying to follow the rules. And one thing that, ironically, GB News doesn't seem to understand about the British public is that the British public, as it turns out, they are very, very keen and very, very invested in people who do follow the rules. because it's called fairness. It's called everybody gets treated the same and there's no favoritism. That's what it is. You know what? Call me a social justice warrior all you want, but I thought social justice meant fair play. I thought it meant everybody gets treated as an equal. I thought it meant that we don't have biases in this country. But there you are. GB News want you to imagine that that doesn't really exist. And probably doesn't exist in the 547 people that complained about this. Myself included. So, good luck. And I'll see all of you guys again next time. Thank you.